From the moment I stepped into the office, I could feel the weight of judgment in the air. It wasn't overt. No one outright said anything, but I caught the glances, the whispers, the slight hesitations in conversation. I had dealt with this before. Being a black professional in a corporate setting meant I was no stranger to preconceived notions. Still, I kept my head high and focused on why I was here, to do my job, prove my worth, and build my career. The first week went smoothly enough. I kept to myself, got familiar with the workflows, and exchanged pleasantries with my colleagues. Most were polite, some distant, but one person in particular made his disapproval crystal clear: Ethan. He was a mid-level manager, someone who had been with the company for years and carried himself as if he owned the place. From the first day, his eyes lingered on me a second too long. His smiles never quite reached his eyes, and his comments, though subtle, carried an unmistakable edge. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe he was like this with everyone. Maybe he didn't even realize how he came across. But then the little things started piling up. He would accidentally forget to forward me important emails. If I spoke up in meetings, he would cut me off or rephrase my points as if they were his own. When I completed tasks ahead of schedule, he'd find microscopic faults, nitpicking in a way that he didn't do with others. It was clear. He didn't just dislike me, he wanted to undermine me. Then came the rumors. At first, I didn't notice. But one day, I walked into the break room and conversations died mid-sentence. People who had been warm to me before now seemed distant. I overheard snippets. Something about how I was only hired to fill a diversity quota, how I wasn't really qualified, how I had a bad attitude. My stomach twisted. Ethan. It had to be him. I wanted to confront him, but I knew better. People like him thrived on making others react, on painting themselves as the victim. Instead, I decided to play it smart. I stayed professional, did my job flawlessly, and waited. Because if there was one thing I had learned in life, it was that the truth always comes out. It didn't take long for Ethan's whispers to turn into something louder. Suddenly, I was getting called into meetings where my performance was questioned, despite my work being just as solid, if not better, than anyone else's. Tasks I had completed without issue were mysteriously lost, forcing me to redo them under tighter deadlines. Every time I walked into a room, I could feel the shift in the air, the cautious glances, the unspoken doubts. One afternoon, I walked past a group of colleagues near the water cooler. Ethan stood among them, his voice just low enough to seem private, but loud enough for me to hear. "I don't know, man," he said, shaking his head. "Some people just think they can coast through on handouts." A few nervous chuckles followed, and when they noticed me, they quickly scattered. Ethan, however, didn't even flinch. He just gave me that smug, knowing smirk. It was infuriating. He was careful, strategic. He never said anything outright racist, never did anything blatant. But he planted the seeds of doubt, enough to make people second-guess me, enough to make my job harder in a way that was impossible to prove. And worst of all, it was working. During a weekly meeting, I presented a project I had been working on for weeks. It was solid, detailed, well-researched, something I was proud of. But the moment I finished, Ethan leaned back in his chair and let out a low chuckle. "Interesting approach," he said. "But are we sure this is the best direction? Maybe someone with more experience should take the lead." The room fell silent. No one wanted to challenge him. No one wanted to be the one to defend me. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'd be happy to go over any concerns," I said evenly. Ethan smiled, shaking his head. No, I just think we need to be sure we're not wasting resources." He was testing me, waiting for me to snap, to give him the reaction he wanted. But I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, I met his gaze, steady and unshaken. "Then, let's talk specifics," I said. "What exactly concerns you?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. He hadn't expected me to push back so directly, so professionally. He shifted in his seat, searching for words before finally mumbling something vague about alternative approaches. I knew what he was trying to do, and I knew this wasn't over. But I also knew one thing for certain. He had underestimated me. A week later, the tension in the office had reached its peak. The rumors were spreading faster, and I could see the shift in how people interacted with me. Some avoided eye contact, others hesitated before answering my questions. Ethan had done his job well, turning doubt into distance, but I refused to let it break. Then, something unexpected happened. The office buzzed with excitement. The CEO was visiting. It wasn't just any routine check-in. He rarely showed up unannounced. People straightened their ties, adjusted their desks, eager to make a good impression. Ethan, of course, was at the center of it all, laughing and chatting like he was the company's golden boy. When the CEO walked in, the energy in the room changed. He was a tall, composed man with an air of quiet authority. He greeted people warmly, shaking hands, asking about projects. Then his eyes landed on me. For a brief second, his expression shifted. Recognition flickered across his face, and then he smiled. "Hey man, what are you doing here?" he said, striding toward me, arms wide open. The room went dead silent. I grinned, shaking his hand firmly. "Been here a few months now. Thought I'd surprise you." Ethan's face paled. His eyes darted between me and the CEO, confusion turning into something closer to panic. "You two know each other?" he asked, his voice suddenly much quieter. The CEO chuckled. "Know him? This guy's like a brother to me. We go way back." He clapped a hand on my shoulder, his smile genuine. One of the smartest, hardest-working people I've ever met. The weight of those words settled over the room like a storm. I didn't need to look at Ethan to know what he was feeling. The power dynamic had just shifted in the most unexpected way possible. "Oh," Ethan said weakly, forcing a laugh. That's great. Small world, huh?" The CEO's expression changed slightly. His friendly demeanor didn't waver, but there was something sharper in his gaze now. He glanced at me, then back at Ethan. "So," he said, crossing his arms, "how's he been settling in? I'm sure the team has been welcoming." I watched as Ethan swallowed hard. He knew. He knew the game had just changed, and he had no idea what was coming next. Ethan was sweating. I could see it in the way he shifted in his chair, his usual smugness replaced with an uneasy stiffness. The CEO's question still hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. "Oh, absolutely," Ethan said quickly, forcing a smile. "We've all been working together just fine." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The CEO was watching him carefully, and something told me he already had an idea of what had been happening. "Well, that's good to hear," the CEO said, his voice calm, "because I've been meaning to check in on the team dynamics." He turned toward me. "How's it been for you?" For the first time, I had the upper hand. I could have exposed everything, every subtle jab, every lie Ethan had spread. But I didn't need to. Instead, I let the silence stretch just long enough for the weight of the moment to settle. "It's been interesting," I said finally, keeping my voice even. "A learning experience." The CEO nodded slowly. "I see." He turned back to Ethan. "Well, I hope you've been a great mentor, Ethan. After all, leadership isn't just about experience, it's about character." Ethan's face twitched. of course," he mumbled. Then the CEO dropped the bombshell. "I actually came today with an announcement," he said, looking around the room. "We're restructuring some leadership roles, and I've been reviewing performance feedback over the last few months." He turned to me. "I need someone sharp, someone who understands teamwork, someone I can trust." He smiled. "I think you'd be perfect for the new senior position we're creating." The room was dead silent. Ethan's jaw nearly hit the floor. His mouth opened, then closed, like he wanted to protest but didn't know how. "Wait," he stammered. "You mean him?" The CEO's expression didn't change. "Yes, Ethan. Him." I met Ethan's gaze and saw it. The moment he realized his lies, his manipulations, everything he had done to sabotage me had just backfired spectacularly. "You've been here a while, Ethan," the CEO continued. "But leadership isn't just about time served, it's about integrity. And from what I've heard, this guy has a lot of it." Ethan was speechless. He knew arguing wouldn't help him. He had played his game well, but he had underestimated who I was and who I knew. The CEO clapped me on the shoulder. "Let's talk more in my office. I want to hear your thoughts on the team moving forward." As I followed him out, I could feel the eyes of the entire office on me. And behind me, Ethan sat frozen, knowing that his worst nightmare had just become reality. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the office shifted dramatically. Ethan, who had once strutted through the office with an air of untouchable confidence, now moved with hesitation. His usual smirk was gone, replaced with tight-lipped silence. He avoided eye contact, especially with me. He knew he had lost badly. The CEO didn't fire him, at least not immediately. That would have been too easy. Instead, he made it clear that Ethan's influence was over. His opinions were no longer taken seriously. His voice no longer carried weight. The same people who once laughed at his subtle jabs now kept their distance. And then the final blow came. One morning, an internal memo was sent out. A company-wide restructuring. Ethan's name wasn't on the list of leadership roles. Instead, he had been demoted. The message was clear. In this company, your position wasn't secured by favoritism, manipulation, or prejudice. It was earned through respect, skill, and integrity. And Ethan had failed on all counts. The day after the announcement, he finally approached me. It wasn't an apology, not really. "Look," he said, shifting awkwardly, "I guess things didn't go the way I expected." I met his gaze, calm and unwavering. "No, Ethan, they didn't." He hesitated. "I didn't mean for things to get personal." I let out a quiet laugh. "But they were, and you knew exactly what you were doing." For a moment, he looked like he wanted to argue, to defend himself. But he didn't, because we both knew the truth. I didn't need to say anything more. He had already learned the lesson the hard way. As he walked away, shoulders slumped, I realized something. I didn't need revenge. His downfall wasn't orchestrated by me. It was his own doing. His lies, his arrogance, his prejudice, it all came back to haunt him. And as for me, I thrived. I led my team with respect. I built trust where he had spread doubt. I succeeded not because of my connections, but because I had earned it. Ethan had once believed that power came from control, from belittling others. But in the end, the truth was undeniable. Real power comes from character, and that was something he would never have.